Hi, I'm Bayly Kahle.
I'm Meghan Tinnea.
And I'm Cleary, and we are hosting the 2021 Climate Day of Action.
We would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe.
6 years left. That's how many years left we have until the effects of climate change are irreversible. We have been taught in schools that it is our fault for the climate crisis, but it's not. It's the top 1% of fossil fuel billionaires who have known about this crisis since the 1970s.
Therefore, we need to take action now and push our political leaders to take climate action.
Today will be a day filled with workshops and speakers so that you can learn more about all the aspects of our current climate crisis and how to take both political and environmental action.
Please participate, ask questions, and be open-minded of our speakers as they have taken time out of their busy schedules to be here with us today.
Now introducing Ava Stewart, Gabe Shen, and one of our speakers, Mike Foster.
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm a volunteer, an activist. I have talked to thousands and thousands of students and government leaders. I have shared slideshows, and I have started organizations like 350 Seattle and Plant for the Planet for students. And I'm really discouraged that I'm here in 2021 talking with you again, and nobody is talking about the kind of plan that would actually protect you. Here's a slide that shows you what we have to do. We have to reduce CO2 in the atmosphere below 350 parts per million as quickly as possible. This is an old chart when I started giving these talks a few years ago in 2012, 2013. This chart doesn't apply anymore. And as you can see, if we start in 2020 on this chart, we get to 350 around 2300 if we cut emissions 6% a year and if we plant 1 trillion trees worldwide. That's not going to cut it anymore. Here's another chart. This is more updated, and it shows you that not only do we need to cut emissions more like 20% a year or more, which you can do, I can do, but we can't get the city or the county or the state or the government, the federal government to do. That's our job, is to get them to do it. So we can cut emissions 20% or more per year. We're still going to need some technology that doesn't exist yet, which Greta always talks about. Most important activist on earth. She's a teenager, and read her speeches, understand what she's saying about listen to the scientists. When the house has begun to burn down all around us, there is no hope. There is only action. Action counts. Action brings hope. And meanwhile, I'll be happy to answer a few questions. Thank you for inviting me.
Do you think it's too late to save the environment?
That is like the number one question that everybody wants to know, Ava, and probably think about it the whole time that they're reading something about climate or the environment. It's a complicated answer because the truth is, when I was starting school 50 years ago, there were 3 times as many living beings on the planet. A few years ago, when I started talking at Nathan Hale, there were twice as many. That means we reduced the population of life on the planet by 50% in my lifetime. So I did that, right? And I can say I did that because I'm living in the wealthiest country on the planet. We got this huge middle class, and we consume, depending on who you're comparing us to, 20 or 30 or 40 times more than other people who are living on the planet. Now, maybe they're food insecure. Maybe they don't know where their next meal is coming from. But maybe they do. Maybe they're living in an indigenous way, the way human beings have lived here for tens of thousands of years. But I think that I can't get by, I can't make it through the day or the year without consuming 30 or 40 times more. And so there's this thing about, is it too late? We need to restore the life on the planet. It is too late for 2/3 of life on the planet. But what's left depends on us, people like you and me. The lucky ones who are educated, who know that it's going on, who understand enough science to be able to say and measure and be able to realize, oh, the oceans don't go on forever. The forest doesn't go on forever. We actually have to stop 20 years ago.
So our next question is, how bad really is the climate crisis situation? I mean, you hear different things in the media and in social media, and they can be kind of like snippets of information where it's hard to get kind of that full picture. And so, yeah, like, what are the actual kind of like, how severe are we looking at in terms of the climate crisis?
Okay, I'm not going to pull any tricks here. I'm going to try and be honest with you, because I believe that when people understand the emergency, they can take emergency action. Greta says, our house is on fire. She says, I want you to panic. She means it. She's been very clear that, COVID proved that world leaders have never taken climate seriously as an emergency, because look at all the crazy things they did immediately when COVID hit. It was a matter of days and weeks until businesses were being shut down, right? And people were being told, just stay home. And can you imagine if climate was treated in the same way? Would we still be making jet planes and automobiles that burn fossil fuels? Probably not. We would probably cease that right now. Would we still be building new pipelines to move more of that oil to market faster so that we can burn more each day? Not. So on and on and on. You can imagine how different things would be. But how drastic is it? Okay. There's a fella named Roger Hallam, who is a person who was with Extinction Rebellion, a group in the UK, and they've shut down London for weeks at a time. And he was a farmer, an organic farmer, and he was experiencing some of the worst weather effects in history, flooding, and realized that he wasn't going to be able to get his crops in. And he went back to this other thing that he had studied, which was social movements and civil disobedience. And he pretty clear reading the science that if Europe and Russia and the US experience 3 years of drought in a row, bing, 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 that experts say we could have mass starvation in the developed, civilized, industrial major cities of the world, like Europe and the US. And that's hard to imagine, but we already had one of those events a few years ago. So if you get a crop failure situation on the 3 breadbasket places that export food, then we're talking about some of the stuff you see in Hollywood movies, where countries become ungovernable. So that's about as plain as I can be. The other thing is, last month, as far as the rest of the world goes, sentient beings, endemic species are species that live in a particular place and not everywhere. Like you see crows and raccoons pretty much everywhere, but you see, certain species live in a particular area around the world. 90, 95% of endemic species around the world are facing extinction this century. So unless we change rapidly, that's the path we're on. I don't think you can get much more drastic than that. Civilization's going to fail, government's going to fail, and species are blinking out of sight for forever. So, and I feel guilty. I feel responsible. I have benefited and polluted and profited from this all my life. So I feel like we, you do something, or we're just shooting ourselves in the face. It doesn't make any sense. Why? It's absurd that we would keep doing this. So drastic, yes. 5 years ago, I shut off the Keystone 1 pipeline with my bare hands because 5 years ago, we were 15 years too late getting started on major changes. Each year that we delay, it gets harder, and the changes we have to make are going to have to be greater because each year we wait, we are polluting more than we did the year before. So like now we're polluting double what we did 30 years ago when we said climate is an emergency. That's the most drastic and frightening part of climate for me is the social, the behavioral, the political response. And watching as we've seen climate champion after climate champion talk and not stop pollution. Everybody's pointing the finger at everybody else. So that to me makes it drastic. And that's why I was willing to go to trial and willing to go to prison for shutting off an oil pipeline.
I was just wondering, what can I, as an individual, as a young person, as someone who lives in their parents' household and doesn't have like a flowing income, what can I do to help?
Do you follow, have you studied up on Greta online, seen her on social media? Do you know anything about that, Ava?
Just a bit from like here and there, but
Here and there.
not super in depth.
She's on the autism spectrum. She learned the science, back in elementary school and wanted to be a scientist, and but she couldn't look away. She couldn't blink. She couldn't say, "Oh well, yes, I know that we're cutting down all the forests, but I'm gonna keep going to the grocery and putting things in a paper bag and watching the world leaders ignore this problem." No, it made no sense to her. So by the time she was in high school, she started this thing where she said, I gave up. She gave up. She was going to sit down on the street in front of the government house of leadership, and she was going to just make the leaders look her in the eye when they walked in and out of the building. It was despair. She couldn't see going to school and getting an education if she had no future. And she didn't understand why everybody else in the world could just pretend like it was going to be okay and just keep on polluting and going to work and going to school as normal. In between that event, which really did start the whole Fridays for Future, climate strikes, all that, in between that and her learning the science, she had the same problem at home with her parents, because they were kind of aware and they kind of knew it was going on, but they didn't live like they cared. And so she had fights with her parents, and she was suicidal. She refused to eat. She was losing it. And her parents changed because of her, not because they were trying to do the right thing, but because they were terrified for their daughter. This idea of what can a person do? Yeah, it's you're going to hear arguments about, is it personal or is it system change? Like, what can one person do? One person can live the way we need to be living in 2050, because our pollution today is going to keep overheating the planet at least until 2050, and half of that pollution today is going to keep overheating the planet for centuries. So living as if we want to be here until 2050, until 2100, until 2300, right? That's what we can do. The other thing we can do is restore, like I was saying earlier. There's a group called the Half Earth Project, and they want to restore nature, should have the right of way. Wildlife, other beings, plants should have primacy, and human beings should back off on half of the earth. If we do that, plants and animals can evolve quickly as climate changes. What I was saying about endemic species is that they only live in one spot. They're going to need to be able to move and migrate and adapt. And if they develop a mutation that allows them to live in a hotter place, or in a wetter place, or whatever, they need to be able to mix and mingle and procreate and create new species as other species are blinking out into extinction. What else can one person do? So talking about it. We are social creatures. We influence each other. We move like a school of fish. Like in Finding Nemo, who's the leader of the school of fish? No one fish can be in charge. It's impossible when you've got 10,000 fish all moving around making these crazy shapes. Same with those birds over farmers' fields. Maybe you've seen a video of a murmuration of birds where they're all like moving around, and it just looks like this cloud of birds, and they're making these crazy shapes. Why aren't they all banging into each other and falling to the ground? You got 50,000 birds, and they're like, it's like a dance. They're wingtip to wingtip. They're moving so fast, changing direction, but nobody is in charge. No one person decides that. It's about their relationships. So the people you're closest to are the people you have the greatest influence on. Staying close to people, influencing them, talking with them about your fears, anxieties, concerns, ideas, inspirations, and then blocking things. I'm a big proponent of that. There's going to be a big action in Minnesota in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And there is a pipeline that is going to be shut down in Minnesota. And people across the country are being invited to come and follow the indigenous tribes who are leading this effort. And they're going to stop Line 3, which brings tar sands oil, the dirtiest oil on earth, from Canada into the US. And they're going to shut it down. And they're asking President Biden to close it, just like he did Keystone XL on day one when he took office. So there's blocking actions. You can get involved with Sunrise and other groups locally. 350 is a great one. Finding people who are thinking and behaving and acting like we actually have to stop the pollution. We can stop these things, right? We have to stop those things. And there's a lot of people working on a lot of great projects right now. So what can one person do? Talk with the people you love, you care about, let them know that you matter. Young people speaking, your voice is 10 times more powerful than mine. I'm an old man, I've benefited from this. You own climate.
What does society look like? And you kind of got into this a little bit with the talking to people and just like starting the conversation with people. And as young people, we are able to have that attention given to us because of how we are going to be impacted and how that's going to affect us later on in life. What does society look like when we are collectively combating climate change and when we're coming together as a society to do that?
It means that your life matters as much as mine. It means that the harm to you in the future matters as much as it does today, right? So if I have to quit my job or lose my job, if I have to end my business or industry or stop selling tickets for cruises in Seattle, because you're not going to be able to be okay 50 years from now if I keep doing that. There's no discount on your life, right? So Indigenous people talk about doing everything and considering our impact on the next 7 generations. I would love to be able to do that. That would be about 200 years or so. So imagine that what I'm doing today, I have to weigh it against how is this going to impact everybody who follows me, any descendants of ours, until 2300. And if I think it's if I think that they're going to be better off, then I need to keep doing it. If I think that it's going to hurt them, then I have to stop doing it. That was an indigenous principle that kept humans and nature in balance, was good enough. Today, I'm just asking people to think about our impact on this generation, on your generation. I don't need to imagine future generations anymore. The emergency is on top of us. I never thought we would be polluting more than we did last year in the year 2020. I assumed 25 years ago that we were going to start polluting less and less each year. So that's the number one thing. I was part of organizing families in a lawsuit. The Foster v. Ecology students sued the state for the right to a habitable future. And they actually won. And because of that, you have the right under Washington's state constitution to the essential resources, air and water, which you will require to grow to adulthood safely, unquote. That's from the judge. But our governor, the climate governor, Jay Inslee, made sure that the judicial branch could not tell the executive branch how to carry that out. The judge ordered the Department of Ecology to do their homework and turn in a plan to make that happen within 6 weeks. That was 5 years ago. So the idea that this kind of like, what does society look like when we're all together? Well, our judges would be ruling in your favor and in the favor of, people who are going to be alive in 2050 and in 2100. I could still be alive in 2050, but I'm going to be old, right? But the idea that there are going to be kids being born then, we don't take their lives as seriously. Make the basics for people and eliminate a lot of the hyper consumption that is eating up more of the planet than the planet can give us. There's more than enough for everybody. There is so much more than we need. So future society is going to look very simple. It's going to look very connected. We're going to have stronger family units. People are going to stay closer to home, closer to family, stay in closer relationship. And I believe we're going to work on food insecurity. I believe we're going to take more time to grow food where we live. So there's a food forest. There are 2 food forests that I know of in Seattle. These are gardens that have like permanent orchards, trees, and plants that are, they come back every year, and you can just go through and you can just get food. If you want food, if you need food, you go in, you take some, you leave some so that the plant is healthy and keeps growing. You don't take too much, but you take what you need. It's a free food forest. And people are starting these here in Seattle, and I hope around the world. I think we're going to be coming together to take care of each other a lot more.
What exactly is greenwashing?
Ooh, greenwashing. Watch out for this. It's been happening, and it's happening worse, and it's going to get worse as you're becoming adults. And what it means is, I'll give you an example. There was a Volkswagen campaign on TV when you were little called Farfignugan, and this was their motto. And nobody knew what the word meant. It was so cool. It was so hip. And they would show you their little diesel Volkswagen machines driving down the highway, and they'd say clean green diesel. Volkswagen's got like 45 miles to the gallon. It was like the best, cleanest, greenest car you could get. Volkswagen created software so that they could pass emissions tests with this vehicle that was putting out more pollution, like 40 times more pollution than was allowed by law. That was the car they were selling you. A car that would pollute so much, especially in like narrow urban streets, lower income neighborhoods where there's lots of like heavy traffic on the streets. If you want a 10% discount on a house in Seattle, look on a busy street because the air pollution is so bad. Well, Volkswagen was selling these cars that would pollute all this stuff and like make people sick as the cleanest, greenest car you could buy because it got 45 miles to the gallon. That's a perfect example of greenwashing. They lost in court. Now they're coming out with all these electric vehicles because they couldn't sell gas vehicles anymore because everybody realized they were being lied to. Greenwashing is when a politician or a policy tells us something that it's not. Tells us it's a solution and it's not. So, yeah, I'm aware that both political parties want us to think that they're the climate heroes, that they're going to save the forests, they're going to save the manatees, they're going to save, they're greener than the other one. They love America more than the other party. But both parties are trying to increase business pollution in the economy, or at least allow it to grow and bring back jobs to America, and on and on and on and on. So there's a huge amount of greenwashing that goes on there. Corporations are the worst. Anytime you see Coca-Cola advertising, it's almost always greenwash now, because they make billions of plastic bottles that are going mostly into the ocean. You and I are now consuming a credit card of plastic each week. That's how much plastic is getting into my system just because of the plastic that I'm coming in contact with every time I go to the grocery store. So Coca-Cola, other companies are going to try and tell us that, oh, their bottles are the best or cleanest or greenest or whatever. Or they're not going to do what needs to be done to make or restore a place we can live in until 2100 or 2300. They're much less make it better in 2100. I'm actually really excited to be alive right now. I fight this battle. I'm on a roller coaster because some days I'm like, I can't get out of bed. This is too much. what can one person do? It's too late. All those thoughts go through my head, and it's overwhelming. But you and I get to be alive at the moment when history changes. We change it, or it changes us. That's the only question. And I would rather change history than be eliminated by it, or just have to live with the fact that somehow it's okay for us to all stand on the sidelines and watch as we choke off life on this planet. Yeah, it's not okay to be a bystander. Okay. We're all in this together. We're all climate activists now. If we're not climate activists, we're acting on climate by not doing anything. Our inaction is just as powerful as anything anybody is doing to stop the pollution. We're polluting so much. And I was raised in this way, and you're being raised in this way, and it's hard to imagine living a simpler way. But somebody once said, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is to imagine the end of capitalism. That's our job. And somebody also said, somebody who started like 4 of the major environmental groups 50 years ago said, it's incredible what young people can accomplish before old people tell them it's impossible. And I know that's true. I've seen it. So find each other. Action in community is the only antidote to despair. If you think that your house is on fire, sitting around thinking about it, talking about it, does not make you safe. It's only action that counts. And I get tired of people talking like myself, and I'm ready for people to take action. I hope you are too.
Thank you, Ava, Gabe, and Mike for that amazing interview.
Now presenting speakers from Change the Chamber, a bipartisan group of students taking on one of the largest dark money pro-fossil fuel groups in the United States, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And that's our second speaker for today.
Now you have the opportunity to go and learn more in the different workshops we have provided. Your mentorship teachers have been given the link to these breakout rooms. Please join, participate, and have fun in these amazing and informative workshops.